here. We're today at the Wine House in West Los Angeles. We're going to be tasting some wheat beers. We're in the middle of Oktoberfest season, which, you know, that means fest beers everywhere, but there's more to German beer than fest beer. So let's go inside and see what these wheat beers taste like.
Ich seh die weißen Nebel ziehen, die Sonne scheint ins Gwent. Tiroler Land, mein Heimatland, ich lieb dich ohne End.
So I'm really excited to be here with Mark Gerlach from Uplifter Spirits. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
My pleasure, as always.
We're going to be tasting some German wheat beers, and so I was just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about these special glasses we brought here.
Yes, wheat beer, because the yeast is alive, creates a lot of foam. And so these particular hourglass-shaped glasses allow the bubbles to be released and the beer to fit in the glass. If you don't have a special glass, wheat beer has a tendency to overflow because of the carbonation.
And you're probably going to end up losing a lot of that aroma.
You lose the flavor, you lose the aroma, and you lose the distinct carbonation that's alive. Wheat beers are alive. They're bottle fermented. The yeast is alive. So it's a live beast. And we have two very tiny wheat beer breweries from the Alps of Bavaria.
Let's taste that first beer, why don't we?
The Huff family I've known for about 40 years. These two breweries are strictly wheat beer breweries. That way they can have their own wheat beer yeast to develop their own distinct flavor and personality. Breweries that brew both wheat beers and lagers, they have to have a generic yeast because wheat beer yeast contaminates lager yeast. Every time they brew a batch of wheat beer, they have to completely clean the yeast out of the brewery before they can brew their lagers. So wheat beer breweries have their own distinct yeast, and so they each have their own distinct character, personality, and traits. And the Huff family is very famous. They have all their four wheat beers have a distinct banana, pear, mango, and papaya flavor to it. And this is their Helleweisse. Helle just means pale, so it means 100% pale malts. And Weisse actually means white, but it connotates that it's a wheat beer.
Yes.
And Bavarian wheat beer, by German law, has to have a minimum of 50% wheat malt, but traditionally it's about 65% wheat malt. So it's a very distinct flavor. And there are other characteristics of wheat beer that doesn't occur in American wheat beers, which I'll explain to you shortly.
And Mark, I just want to mention you gently rolled the bottle there. What were you doing there?
You want to, with Bavarian wheat beers, because the yeast is at the bottom, you want to integrate the yeast into the beer because the yeast is where all the flavor comes from. And so that is why you integrate the yeast. You don't want the yeast to sit in the bottom, basically, and leave the flavor in the bottom of the bottle. So you basically roll the bottle. There are many different ways. The Bavarians have all sorts of ways to do it, so everyone has their own distinct way to do it. I pour it like champagne generally, and then twist the bottle a little bit more, and then pour it on top, so I get that 70s reverse lava lamp effect, which I so appreciate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Or Prost, as we say. Wheat beer glasses, you always clink at the bottom because they have a tendency to break if you don't.
There you go.
Cheers.
Wow, that's really nice. Right up front, you get a little bit of that like banana, tiny bit of clove. The spiciness actually comes, I think, more from the flavor, and it has a ton of like a sort of like a crackery wheat flavor from the malt. I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah, wheat beer in Bavaria is considered a health food product. We drink it at 10 in the morning, traditionally with Weisswurst. It has some health food benefits I probably shouldn't talk about on camera, but it will break down kidney stones. So any of you out there with kidney stones, drink a lot of wheat beer and you'll be fine.
That's a good tip to know. So Mark, let's move on to our second beer. What do we have on tap?
We have, from my good friend Tony Schwendel, Weissbräu Schwendel. This is an extremely tiny brewery. They only brew 10,000 hectoliters of beer, which equivocates to about 9,000 barrels a year. The beer is only delivered within 5 kilometers of the brewery.
Wow.
And I'm proud to have found Tony's brewery. He's the third generation. His grandparents started this wheat beer brewery in 1935. So unless you're 5 kilometers from the brewery...
What's the name of the town?
Well, it doesn't have a name because it's between two villages. It's between the village of Tascherting and Schalkner, and it's in the middle of nowhere, so it's also difficult to find. But Tony's, his family started with 3 wheat beers. Tony's a young guy, he's 29, so they make up to 8 different styles of wheat beers. So but the thing that attracted me to his wheat beer brewery, he has the distinct flavors, but it's the only wheat beer brewery I've found that in their pale or their Helleweis, they get a distinct fresh melon flavor. And for me, that fresh melon, I can drink a lot of it. And for me, that's an importance for wheat beer, especially when you start drinking it first thing in the morning for breakfast.
What kind of ABV are we talking on this beer?
This is 5.2% alcohol, and the original one from Hop is 5.5% alcohol. So very light in alcohol.
So they are the kind of beer that you can have a few of these.
Yes, you can have. I recommend 5 liters a day, but everyone else has their choices.
Prost.
Prost.
You're right. It does have that little hint of a melon flavor, and it's actually not as spicy as the hop beer that we tried first, and it's really smooth. I mean,
that's Tony.
I could see drinking a whole lot of this beer.
Yeah, it's a rough day when I go visit Tony at the brewery. Luckily, his aunt in front of the brewery owns a hotel and a restaurant. So I end up camping out for the night because I can't really drive away. So it works out very well for my...
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Lang hör ich fürs Leben gern. Jetzt hört's mir zu, die lieben Leid, jetzt wird's ein Jodler hören.
Mark, I understand we're moving on to a Dunkelweiss.
We are.
What's the difference between a Dunkelweiss and a regular Weiss beer?
A Helleweis is 100% pale malts, and a Dunkelweiss is 100% dark malts. So that's really the only difference. The alcohol levels are the same. It's all about 5.2% alcohol. And actually, dark beer is even more healthy for you than pale beer. So all of you with health issues should be drinking nothing but dark wheat beer.
I think I'm going to walk out of here even healthier than I came in.
Absolutely, as always. And this is actually not as dark as you will find the next one. Tony is a unique character because he actually is the only wheat beer brewery in Germany that brews 3 different dark wheat beers. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine that is 0.1% of the entire market for beer in Germany. But I'm very proud of the fact that he makes 3 distinct dark wheat beers. So we get to taste 2 of them today. Prost.
Prost. That is also really nice, and this one actually the melon flavor comes through a little bit more, and you also get a little bit of, I don't know, maybe just like a little bit of toffee kind of caramelly thing from the darker malts.
Yeah, I love this beer. This beer, and with food,
yeah,
this is really a great accompaniment to food. I mean, I drink the pale beers I can drink alone, and I love Weisswurst when you can find them anywhere in Los Angeles. Like European Sausage Kitchen makes their own that are phenomenal, and there are a few makers. But with these dark wheat beers, they go with a plethora of foods, and it's delicious.
Yeah, it's definitely a richer beer, but it's still very drinkable.
And it's not heavy. That's the advantage to, especially all German dark beers. They're never heavy, and they're meant to be consumed with food. They're a great match for food.
Mark, so I understand up next we have a Weisserbach.
Yeah.
Well, what is that?
Well, it's wheat Bach, and this is a unique category of beer. All wheat beer breweries have a Bach beer, but they can go anything from very pale to very dark, and Tony makes 2 dark ones. He makes this dark wheat, and then he makes a double dark wheat, which is available most of the year, but it's 9%, and I can't really drink it that early in the day. So Tony makes, instead of a pale, there's golden colors, but there's also dark. So he makes 100% dark wheat Bach, which you get some ripe banana flavors. This is, I do drink a lot of this beer, probably more than I should.
What kind of ABV are we talking on this one?
7.4.
Ah,
So this makes you happy.
We're graduating.
We're graduating. This makes you happy very quickly. Prost.
Well, you know, this one still has that same yeast character from the other two beers from the same brewery, but it starts to get into like a little bit of that dark fruit character.
Right.
And, yeah.
Yeah, blackberries,
Yeah.
ripe black cherries.
Black cherries for
So,
sure.
yeah, you
Maybe
get
even a
all
little
those.
tiny plum.
Yeah, exactly. You get those darker stone fruits in this beer, and it's
And this one could sneak up on you for
it
sure.
does. Yeah,
With the-
you got to watch it after about 2 or 3. You got to realize that okay, it's 7.4. We better watch where we're going from here on in.
But I love all of these beers. They had that. They're super effervescent. You know, they just kind of they dance on your tongue a little bit. They're really
alive.
nice.
They're alive. And this tiny little brewery, when I discovered Tony, I was hooked. I was hooked.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for sharing these beers with us. They were
Anytime.
really awesome.
I like to share beer. I like to drink beer. Thank
Prost.
you very much, and prost.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our content. I don't know about you, but I'm gonna go check out this beer fridge and see what else is in there.
Gestorben bin, dann tragt mich hoch hinauf. Begrabt ihr mich im Tal herunter, dann steig ich selber rauf. Und jodle noch aus voller Brust vom Berg ins tiefe Tal. Hinaus ins schöne Alpenland zum allerletzten Mal.